So, Joseph,
Yes.
I hear Art Acevedo is going to Colorado.
Lucky them.
So, ladies and gentlemen, Aurora, Colorado has decided to name Art Acevedo as interim chief of police. I suspect he's the interim chief because he hasn't passed the Colorado peace officers test yet. It's the peace officers standards in education test. And once he passes it, then I guess he'll be able to actually wear the uniform. But there's an interesting story behind this. So going all the way back to Austin PD when he was chief of police there, there's this guy, Jeffrey Schlanger, who owns a company called Integrasure, Inc., which apparently Art Acevedo has been consulting with or working with since he was in Austin. And anytime there's some kind of, high-profile use of force case in Austin or Houston, Miami, wherever he happens to be, this company shows up from Florida and starts doing reviews of body camera video and other stuff like that. Also, Art Acevedo was consulting with a company called Trulio, which uses AI networks to filter through body camera video. So they can take like 100 hours of body camera video and scan through it in like 2 or 3 minutes, looking for officers using profanity or officers using force or, some officers giving commands, officers yelling and stuff like that. And then it can extract the video so it can be reviewed. And then along with that is it starts categorizing officers in a database to see if there are officers who are using force on a basis that's often, as opposed to a rare basis.
Yeah. What could possibly go wrong?
Right. So in other words, if you are a like a hard charging officer and you're out there trying to do the job and you're arresting a lot of people, you're getting into fights with a lot of people, you're stopping the bad guys like, well, you're supposed to.
Mm-hmm. And that's what's going to happen if you are enforcing the law. Then
you get segregated in this database under what's called Trulio. And if you go to their website, it's trulio.co, right? And it's automated body camera review and analysis. And this is who Art Acevedo was working with this year. And I think what happened is Integrasure was hired and I think paid about $4.5 million by Aurora, Colorado, to address a consent decree that came from not the federal government, but the state of Colorado, the Attorney General of Colorado. Mm-hmm. And in that consent decree, they were reviewing policies, procedures, training, use of force incidents, and how both the police department and the fire department, who were involved in this, I guess, in custody death of Elijah McClain, who was fighting the officers at the scene. Mm-hmm. Apparently the officers at the scene used some kind of carotid restraint, as we like to call it, or chokehold. Yeah. And in the process, I think the paramedics gave him a dose of ketamine, from what I understand, to try to sedate him because he was fighting the paramedics as well. And he had an overreaction to it, wound up falling into a coma. Several days later, he died. I mean, well, in the autopsy report, it said that he was violently fighting the officers who were trying to take him in custody because he was trespassing on different properties in this neighborhood that they thought he was trying to break into one of the houses or something. Okay. Consequently, he winds up dying in the custody of the officers. And now, of course, they all go to get indicted by the grand jury, as is expected to happen. But nevertheless, Art Acevedo gets hired to consult on the consent decree. And I think after paying $4.5 million, Aurora came to the conclusion, the city, that it would be cheaper to just hire Art Acevedo as opposed to paying Integrasure to deal with the consent decree, since he was the consultant apparently dealing with it. Okay.
Well, he's faster than the computer at making judgments. I guarantee you.
So now that we know where he's going, let's talk to the police officers in Aurora, Colorado. There's 744 officers last I checked. So it's about 1/8 the size of Houston. And the city itself has about 400,000 residents. So it's about 1/10 the size of Houston. And let's talk about the monster they've allowed to come into their home.
Be afraid. Be very afraid.
What's he going to do? What do we think he's going to do? Well, we can only tell you what we've seen him do in Austin, in Houston, and what he tried to do in Miami. All right. One of the things that he loves to do is he loves to fire older officers.
Yeah, he likes to age discriminate.
Yeah. If you're an older officer, like if you've been there 20 years and you're eligible for retirement especially, he doesn't care about your experience.
No, he couldn't care less.
The very first IAD complaint you get, if you have 20 years or more with your department and you're eligible for retirement, I don't know if in Aurora you use a point system or what, but you'll be fired, just haphazardly fired. They won't care. And what'll happen is you'll have some innocuous or benign IAD complaint filed by somebody you've arrested, and he'll come at you and say, well, we're going to fire you or you can retire. And 95% of officers, 99% really, just say, okay, I'll retire. And that's what he wants. He wants you gone because he sees you as a part of the old regime. And he won't like you.
And you're more expensive.
Yeah, and you're more expensive, exactly, because you got to pay veteran officers a lot more than rookie officers, and he'll want to get rid of that overhead in the budget by getting rid of officers with experience. So that's one of the things he loves to do, and so that's usually the very first thing he starts doing is he changes the way internal affairs goes after officers, especially veteran officers. One of the things he also enjoys doing is, yes, you all have body camera video, and normally a police department will review body camera video when there's a use of force complaint. Not with Art Acevedo.
No.
What he will do is he'll have supervisors once a week or twice a week start reviewing video from your body camera video just to see if they can find policy violations, especially older officers, to get rid of them. And what he thinks he's doing is he thinks he's instilling professionalism in his officers. That's not what he's doing.
No.
What he's doing is he's paralyzing officers because police work is an ugly business. It just is. It's just an ugly business. And, human beings get involved in messy situations and nobody's perfect, clearly. But what he does is he puts this boulder on the shoulders of every sergeant or lieutenant in every patrol division that you better go find something wrong. Because if you're not finding anything wrong with your officers, well, then you're just not looking.
Yeah, he also bullies the command staff and make sure that they are towing the line, the exact same line that you're talking about. He runs roughshod over captains and assistant chiefs and whatever it is, however you have it in Aurora, and kowtows them into compliance.
Yes.
And they do. I mean, in a second.
Right. So if you are a hard charger, you love to go after bad guys in Aurora, Colorado, I would suggest you not do that.
Yeah.
If you want to keep your job. If you want to keep your job, you're going to have to get your head down, get off the radar, keep your mouth shut. If you're close to retirement, don't do anything, man. Just do the minimum, because that's the only way you're going to get to see your pension. If you are eligible for retirement, do even less, because the first chance they get to get rid of you, they're going to get rid of you, or Art Acevedo will get rid of you.
Yeah. He loves to fire officers for the older officers, especially 20 years plus, for little or nothing. I mean, absolute ludicrous crap that he puts forth there, and make sure internal affairs looks at, or excuse me, the supervisors look at all this body footage. One of the things that he loved to do in HPD was ding officers for not having their seatbelt on. Okay. Yeah. They would be pulling up to a robbery. Didn't matter if they were if it was a robbery or a family disturbance where they needed to get out of the vehicle quickly. He would hammer officers for not having their seatbelt on for 10, 15 feet in a private parking lot. Okay. Stuff like that. And I mean, the stories that are out there about what he's done, or not the stories, he fired 4 officers in the Chavez shooting, where the officers, and he even said it himself on the news, they did everything by policy, but I just couldn't justify that many shots.
So there's a good chance,
yeah,
if you are involved in a shooting in Aurora, Colorado, you'll be fired.
Yeah, I mean, these officers did everything by policy, went above and beyond, and they got their jobs back.
Well, yeah, after a year?
Yeah, exactly. They still had to fight for it, but that's exactly precisely what he does.
Yes.
Bad decision maker.
Yeah. So the results of these policies and this attitude, really, it's a general attitude of screw you.
Yeah.
That Acevedo brings to your department. I don't care about your laws. I don't care about your policies. I don't care about your procedures. I don't care about your traditions. I don't care about your morale. The morale in your department is going to vanish. If you have any left now, it's going to vanish.
Yeah.
And he's just going to crush it all. And who was it he told in a meeting one time when they were asking about whether you can just fire officers? And he said something about, you just do it.
That was McClellan. McClellan said, I would like to do this. That was the old chief that he replaced. I would like to do this, or I'd like to do that. And he just said, you just do it, Chuck. You just do it. Okay. Which means you just circumvent the Part 143 of the Civil Service Code,
basically what he's saying
the
is
policies, everything. You just do it.
Yeah, just ignore the law.
Exactly.
And do it and see if you can get away with it.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the way the laws are written, when you work for the government, 9 times out of 10, you do get away with it.
Yeah.
The government doesn't really have to follow the law.
Yeah, there's no teeth
right
in the law. And
so that's what'll happen. So if you think the law is going to protect you, it's not.
No.
And not even remotely. So just give that up. Now, for citizens in Aurora, what are you going to see happen? Well, you're going to see crime increase because everywhere he's been chief of police long enough to actually, fortunately, he was only in Miami 6 months, so he didn't have long enough to completely screw that place up. But he was in Houston long enough.
Yeah, crime is out of control.
Yeah,
here.
We saw crime skyrocket. We saw response times go way up. And why is that? You need to understand, if you live in Aurora, Colorado, why that's going to happen is officers are going to realize that the longer they take to respond to a call, the more likely the suspect will get away. And they won't have to use force. Because every time you arrest a suspect, you have to use force. You have to pull your handcuffs out. You have to put their hands behind their back. You have to put the handcuffs on the person with their hands behind their back. Nobody ever volunteers themselves into handcuffs. Consequently, you have to use force. And he's going to put every supervisor on notice that they have to review every use of force.
And everybody will have to do a force. If you don't have to do force reports now, use a force report, you will not. You will now.
You will, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and any use of force.
So what the citizens need to understand is their police officers are going to be very, very reluctant when Art Acevedo is done with their department to use force. Now you say, oh, well, that's a good thing. No. What we mean by use of force is 4 officers pull up to a robbery. The suspect comes out and has his hands up. All 4 officers point their guns at him. Okay. Used to, that the only one who would do a report is the primary officer.
The primary officer, the one who makes the arrest and does the report. Now everybody has to do a use of force report because you pointed your gun at people. And you say, well, what's wrong with that? Well, what that does is makes people hesitant to use force up front. What we've talked about in our videos a lot. They're hesitant to use enough force up front where they end up having to shoot people.
But why does that matter? It matters because what happens is you stop checking by with other officers who are responding to, say, an aggravated robbery in progress, right? Why is that significant? Well, you become less team-oriented in the police department.
Yes.
And what winds up happening, and every police department he's been the chief of police of, you can ask the officers yourselves, what he does with his style of leadership is he turns every officer into like a bubble. Like the only thing you care about is yourself. You stop caring about your fellow officers because it sets you up for failure.
Yeah.
For example, you decide to check by with somebody on a robbery in progress. as you're getting there, you take your seatbelt off because you're not, you're processing what's in front of you, not what's behind you or what's, you need to get out of your patrol car. You need to get to the suspect to try to get the scene under control. You're not really thinking like a robot. You're thinking like a human being, and you take your seatbelt off while you're still pulling up to the scene, put your vehicle in park, get out of your patrol car. You start trying to find the suspect, the complainant, the witnesses, and then this is all on your body camera video. You do everything right. You find the suspect, you arrest the suspect, you find the complainants, you take their statements, you find the witnesses, you identify them, you do your report, you put the bad guy in jail, but you had to use force to do it. So a supervisor has to review your body camera video, and in the process of reviewing your body camera video, they see that you took your seatbelt off before putting your patrol car in park while pulling up to a robbery in progress, and you get a day off. Or you get 2 days off.
Because it's against policy.
Because you just violated policy. And you violated policy, so we have to discipline you. And consequently, officers are going to become more and more reluctant to work with each other or to check by with each other or to help each other out at scenes because they're going to be more worried about getting suspended for making a mistake than catching the suspect.
And anybody who says, well, police officers shouldn't feel that way. Well, okay, fine. You spend 17 years on the street and this guy comes in, you're gonna lay low for 3 years.
Yeah, you have to.
I mean, yeah, or else you're going to forfeit your pension.
Yeah,
yeah. So if you have spent 20 years in law enforcement, by all means, think that.
Police officers have the same natural reaction to micromanagement as everybody else who sits in a cubicle in their office, right? And if you're going to be judged for every mistake you make to the fullest extent of policy, then you stop wanting to make mistakes. But the only way to not make a mistake is to do nothing.
Yes, exactly.
Because if you do something, you're going to make a mistake about something. You're going to forget to file what does he call it? A response to resistance report?
Yeah, that's another thing he likes to do is change words in your general orders, your SOPs, whatever you have there in Aurora. We had use of force, 600-17.
Yeah, he tries to make them politically salient.
Yeah, exactly. And it was changed to response to resistance because it puts the onus on the bad guys. What he said, no, that doesn't accomplish anything.
And as soon as he left,
they changed it back.
They changed it back to use of force. Yeah. But why? Because the federal courts and the state district courts use use of force as the legal doctrine applied to officers engaged with suspects when they use force. It's a use of force condition or a use of force incident. It's not a response to resistance incident. So he was literally trying to rewrite 50 years of legal doctrine with some stupid policy.
Yeah.
And that's how narcissistic he is. You have to understand.
Oh, incredibly.
Yeah. He thinks he can rewrite legal doctrine through department policy, and you can't. You just can't. You can't rewrite state laws. You can't rewrite federal laws, and you can't rewrite federal and state court decisions that have been coming out on officers' use of force for the last 50 years by simply rewriting a policy. But he thinks he can, and so that's what he does. So here's a good rule of thumb for Aurora PD officers. If the incident in which you're involved winds up on the news, your chances of being fired have increased by 300%. Make no mistake.
At least.
So good luck. Godspeed. We'll see you in the next video. Like and subscribe below. We always read your comments, so please comment when you can. And we'll see you in the next video.